Well, dismissing people based on their identity, their sex, or their skin color is just one facet of a much larger problem and a more dangerous one, the left's systemic campaign against free speech and the open exchange of ideas. The problem is worse, of course, as you well know, on college campuses. At the University of Pennsylvania, for example, a panel discussing U.S. immigration policy was canceled completely after students protested against the inclusion of former ICE Director Tom Homan. A new poll, meanwhile, finds that 51% of Americans and 57% of millennials think the First Amendment goes too far in protecting free speech and should be updated to roll back that right. A majority of those who believe it think that people who commit so-called hate speech ought to go to prison. Peter Boghossian is a philosopher, author of the book How to Have Impossible Conversations, and really a legend among people who follow life on college campuses, and we're honored to have him on tonight. Professor, thanks very much for coming on. You've thought a lot about this.
Thank you.
This question of why it's so difficult to have real conversations in the public sphere recently. When you see this polling on young people and free speech, what does it make you think?
I think it's a mistake to frame the issue in terms of free speech or freedom of assembly. I think it's true, but I think there's something much nastier and much more pernicious going on.
Huh. And what is that?
And, well, what that is they're attempting to rob you of your cognitive liberties. There are academic departments and they have mechanisms in place in the institution to prevent people from pursuing truth on their own, from hearing different voices. And if you just think about it in terms of free speech, I think it misses the larger issue that what these folks are really after, and what I mean by these folks, many in the academic left who's really there's no polite way to say it, they've been proselytized by an invasive ideology. These people are really after your cognitive liberties.
So really the academy is functionking in a way that's the opposite of the way it was designed to function, right? It's
yeah,
making
that's correct.
society
And you said
dumber.
in your last segment that this is not about a right issue or a left issue. This is about the rules of engagement. And you and I have very substantive disagreements politically and socially and even morally, but the way that we deal with those disagreements is not through punching each other or milkshaking, or I would never want you shouted down. I would want to debate you. I'd want to hear your ideas out.
Of course.
But there's a very dangerous group of individuals right now who are attempting to tell you and other people what they can and cannot listen to, whose speech can and cannot be allowed. And they're attempting to institutionalize this, or they have institutionalized this on college campuses through bias response teams and political correctness and mechanisms to not only restrict speech, but to restrict your ability to pursue truth.
Tell me about it. If we didn't work for tough people, we would have been off the air a long time ago. Since you work in this
please,
world,
go ahead.
To tell us, I mean, do people with the attitudes you're describing have complete control over most universities?
Well, the 2017 piece, and there's a piece in the Wall Street Journal in 2018, says that bias response teams, for example, as one mechanism of enforcement, are at 232 universities. And if you look at the Portland State University webpage, it says bias is a state of mind. So, I mean, really, you need to let that idea percolate. It is a state of mind.
Yes.
And people can file responses with the bias response team complaints without putting their name on it. They can do it anonymously. And anybody can be accused of anything. I think a key thing that's really important to understand here is terms people use. Have you heard of the idea of inclusive speech or an inclusive space?
Yes.
All right. So an inclusive space means a space that's welcoming, ostensibly. But what it really means is that it means it's a space that restricts speech. And if it didn't restrict speech, then by definition it wouldn't be welcoming. So there are mechanisms within the university to restrict speech, to prevent freedom of expression, to prevent freedom of assembly, to shout people down, for example, if they don't agree with you. But again, I think the real emphasis here is they're after cognitive liberty. They are absolutely convinced that they have the right answers to questions.
Right. So they're trying not just to control what you say, but what you think, which is even scarier. Professor, thank you very much for coming on tonight. Congrats on the book. I wish we had more time. Happy to have you.